There are 3 main helpers inside of Clash of Clans, along with the temporary ones, and all of them have been pretty controversial in one way or another, with the biggest complaint being that they are all massive scams. So today I want to go over each of the helpers to see exactly what they do and whether or not they are worth it, so we can see if they truly are scams. And I also want to look at how the helpers have impacted the game in general to see if they are a good or bad addition to the game, so let's get right into it. First, I want to go over the Goblin Builder and Goblin Researcher, since they were the first helpers that were added to the game back in October of 2023, and at the time, they were extremely controversial, especially the Goblin Builder. This was basically added as a 7th builder, however, it would work a bit differently because you would have to pay for it on a daily basis, with it costing 40 gems for every day that an upgrade took. So, if something took 5 days to upgrade, the Goblin Builder would cost you 200 gems, and this was really just seen as a massive scam because it wasn't worth it for most people and for most situations. There were just many different ways to spend gems in the game, with one of those being the Book of Heroes, since you could spend 500 gems on it and use that to complete an upgrade instantly, and this would provide more value than the Goblin Builder because you still had to wait the full upgrade time when using him. But either way, there also just wasn't a strong need for the Goblin Builder since you would generally have 6 builders anyways, and spending so many gems on a 7th builder didn't really make sense. The previous builders generally cost gems to place down, but this was a one-time thing, and the most you would pay was 2,000 gems for the 5th builder hut, but there wasn't anything more you would have to pay after initially placing it down. So if we compare the cost of the Goblin Builder to the 5th builder hut, then 2,000 gems would really only save you 50 days of upgrade times, which was not at all worth it when compared to the 5th builder hut. And this meant that the Goblin Builder just overall didn't provide a lot of value, and I would agree that he was pretty much a scam, and he was also just really annoying. However, something that was a little better was the Goblin Researcher, since it was more useful as you only had 1 laboratory and could normally only do 1 upgrade at a time, so being able to do 2 at a time would literally double your progression when it came to troop and spell levels, but I still don't think it was super necessary or all that worth it for most players since they didn't really need to be upgrading multiple troops or spells at once. This is because people normally got their main troops upgraded and done with, so then they are left with the rest of the troops that they just slowly upgrade over time for the sake of leveling them up, and you wouldn't spend a ton of gems speeding up this process because it just wasn't worth it. So this really made the Goblin workers very controversial and is why most people just didn't bother using them because they simply weren't worth it. But next up we have the Builder's Apprentice, which was added in June of 2024, and this was the first permanent helper, and just like the Goblins, his addition to the game was also very controversial. The Builder's Apprentice was kind of like a physical form of the Builder Potion because he would speed up the upgrade times for 1 hour, which is what the potion does, and the physical part comes from him being an actual person that costs gems just like the normal builders. He initially costs 500 gems just to recruit, and after that it takes another 6,000 gems to fully upgrade him to the max level, and this is really where the controversy had come from because people thought this was ridiculous for essentially a builder potion that you could only use once a day. However, after you do the math, the Builder's Apprentice does actually end up becoming worth it after you use him for about a year or so because the time savings add up over time and they equal what you would have paid to finish those upgrades with gems, meaning after that point the Builder's Apprentice is only a good thing because he is free to use outside of the upgrade costs, which is just like how the normal builders work. So, while the Builder's Apprentice was very controversial at the beginning, people eventually realized that he was helpful over the long term. However, this wasn't exactly the case for everyone. This is because you still have to play the game regularly to activate his boost every day and to farm resources to always have upgrades going. So for a more casual player that doesn't do all of that, the Builder's Apprentice wouldn't really be all that worth it since it would take a lot longer to pay off. Plus, these casual players would probably prioritize buying pieces of equipment that they missed instead of upgrading the Apprentice, but on a whole, I do believe he is worth it for most people, and despite having a controversial beginning, people have realized he is actually a good addition to the game. But next up we have the lab assistant, which was added in November of 2024, and he works very similarly to the builder's apprentice in that he speeds up the upgrade times for an hour, and the interesting thing is that he is actually completely free to unlock, unlike the builder's apprentice, which costs 500 gems. However, the total gem cost comes out to be more for max level, as the assistant costs a total of 8,500 gems, while the apprentice is 6,500. So while anyone can use it for free, it does end up being quite costly to get it up to max efficiency, and it overall isn't worth it for a majority of the players in the game. And this is an opposite situation as the builder's apprentice, since he was controversial before being loved, but the assistant was loved when it was first added because people thought he would be as useful as the apprentice. However, they soon found out that wasn't the case, and that led to people disliking him. This is really because it just isn't worth spending extra gems to make the upgrades go a little faster in your laboratory, as a lot of the upgrades aren't urgent and you don't really need them to progress, since all you need to do is upgrade the main troops you normally use and just upgrade the rest over time. And this is something I had mentioned earlier in the video when it came to the Goblin Researcher. So while some of the top players may benefit from upgrading the lab assistant, most people really would just be better off spending their gems on more important things like hero equipment or magic books or something. And this is why the lab assistant is seen as the worst permanent helper in the game, and he is only better than the goblin workers because he is free to unlock. But finally, we have the Alchemist, who is the newest permanent helper, with her being added in February of 2025, and she is also the cheapest one, with her unlock being 100 gems and the rest of the upgrades being 5,750 gems. And she is also probably the most controversial, with it seeming like half the people are against her while the other half are with her. She basically just allows for you to convert your resources into other resources, with her upgrades basically giving you a bigger bonus and also letting you convert more per day. This is obviously great since it lets you take extra resources and convert them to another type of resource that you need more urgently, and it seems like a no-brainer as for why she is a good helper. So why are so many people against her? Well, this is because a lot of people argue that she is pointless due to how easy it is to get loot in the game, since you can quite easily just attack for those resources at any time you want, and you can get them fairly quickly without having to spend any gems on upgrading the Alchemist. And both sides have very valid points, and this is why it seems like the Alchemist is kind of in the middle, with her definitely being useful, but also not being useful enough to warrant the amount of gems she costs. And because of this, it seems like the best strategy is to unlock her and maybe upgrade her once or twice, but after that it would be a waste of gems because you wouldn't need her to be at a high level or anything to get value out of her, and at the lower level she provides the most value when compared to how much you spend on her. And this is really what makes the Alchemist unique, since she is in the middle. With the Apprentice you should upgrade him to the max, but with the Assistant you shouldn't upgrade him at all, and with the Alchemist you should upgrade her a little bit, but not to the max. So overall, we have seen how some helpers have been better than others, and overall they have been a positive addition to the game because they are all optional and you don't actually have to use any of them if you don't want to, and that is good because Supercell isn't forcing anything on you, and with some of them being useful, they just overall are a net positive. And I think that this is a good start for more helpers to come in the future, whether they are temporary or permanent, and I'm really excited to see what Supercell comes up with for new helpers, since the Alchemist was really the first unique one with her resource converting abilities, since the Apprentice and Assistant were basically just versions of potions and were based off of the Goblin workers. But let me know down below how you guys feel about the helpers, and let me know which one is your favorite, since I know there is a bit of a debate on whether the Apprentice is better than the Alchemist. But with that, we are also at the end of the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next one.